Welcome everybody, Noswaith Ar, and we're back with our virtual meetings for our January session. It's so good to see everybody here. It's so good to make contact with you, really. Before I introduce Gareth, I'd just like you all to mute yourselves and to take your videos off, please, off screen.
Apart from Gareth, of course.
Except for Gareth, of course. At the end of Gareth's talk, he will take questions. And at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the little question box where you can enter the questions you have for Gareth. Okay, Gareth, welcome to Penmaen Mawr Historical Society and Museum. Gareth's an illustrator and a photographer who's produced and published 50 local history maps and carried out countless, 250, I think, history walks under the auspices of Menter Fachwen. I know Gareth is moving on with the project he has around maps now, and he'll tell us about that probably through his talk. Tonight, the title of the talk is The Lighter Side of Mapping Local History. This talk will be recorded and logged onto our YouTube portal. Over to you, Gareth.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you for that. And I've never had the pleasure of coming over to Penmaen Mawr Museum yet, and for one reason or another, I've been itching to come over. And hopefully this year sometime we'll get the chance to do it. It'd be great. Yeah, thank you, Shirley. Thank you ever so much. My name's Gareth. I'm from Llanrug originally. Yay, everybody's going nowhere. It's the little village between Caernarfon and Llanberis. And like Shirley said, I run what's called, as you can see from the bottom of your screen, the Menter Fachwen Walk and Discover project. That's been going for about 8 years now. Under the auspices of Menter Fachwen. Before then, I was doing more or less the same thing for many, many years before then. And Shirley mentioned about there being over 50 maps. Now, some of them, now I know this is going to look small because here we are, I'll put that up, there we are. This is an example of one of them. This is a Pentir parish history maps. They're kind of sevenfold things. I know this would be quite small on your screens here, but they're kind of like, they'll hide me, you know, they're kind of this sort of thing, okay? They're all commissioned. They're all commissioned pieces, and they're kind of a mixture of things. You know, you'll see little pictures there to do with. What I like to do is I like to point out hidden histories in full view. So these are the things we drive and walk past every single day. We don't realize that they're there, sort of thing. That's my sort of like mentality when I put these things together. And a lot of those photographs are old photographs. Some of them are my illustrations. Others are reconstructions in photographic form of lost buildings or lost landscapes and things that used to be there. And then you'll see to the left of that, there's the example of the map side, and the red bits are always the public footpaths. You can wander around and that sort of thing. And it's not just that. The problem with this is, when I do all these things, you know, you spend about a good few months putting one of these things together, and you get so many good stories, some of which I'll tell you later. Get so many good stories coming in, you know, you find things out, and it's always an absolute pleasure and a surprise when you find new things out. What do you do with all the stuff you can't fit into one of those maps? That's why we have the walks. So like Shirley said, just before lockdown, we arranged the 250th walk that Menter Fachwen have done over the past 8 years. And then I'll do talks like this, or exhibitions of an evening, a lot of school projects and all this sort of thing. And here's a sentence that a lot of you will recognize. Apart from the maps which are commissioned, everything else, all the trimmings around it are done in sort of minuscule budgets. And none sometimes have to beg, steal and borrow just to get things done. So we'll have all sorts of things. There we are, you know, little exhibitions. And you see that top left-hand photograph of a load of people in a school. Now that's Cwmaglaw School near Llanberis, and it was closed 2 years ago. And well, it should have happened by now, but Menter Fachwen are moving into the school when things open up a bit more. I've got one of the classrooms, and I'll be building a sort of like a small heritage centre for the area there. I'm really looking forward to that. And then so there's various activities and all sorts of things that go on. Like I said, it's all done under sort of like very sort of, you know, minuscule budget, but I'm looking forward to going into the school. So when I come and visit you in Penmaenmawr, I hope you then do a return visit and come and visit us in our little heritage centre in Cwmglaw School when it's up and running. We've all got our histories, haven't we? All, you know, our family histories as well. I think this is where our histories begin, isn't it? Like I said, I'm from Llanrug, but my seafaring family. My grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather were all master mariners. They're all captains of their own ship, and I got a very famous great-grandfather, and there he is. Now that man was John Owen Jones. John Owen Jones, and he holds a unique record in maritime history. You see before you the only sea captain in maritime history to lose a ship in dry dock. That is the total truth for you. You go into Lloyd's of London, don't know if you've ever been in Lloyd's of London, they've got a massive foyer and they've got this like this scoreboard up on the wall as you go into the foyer, well they used to anyway, last time I went. And the scoreboard is like how many ships have been lost for various reasons, you know. At the top is a humongous amount of number in conflict, and you've got others lost, you know, hit rocks and others, and then blah blah, and the numbers get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. You've got 12, you know, hit by iceberg, that sort of thing. And at the very bottom is 1, and it was lost in dry dock, and that was my great-great-grandfather. We're very proud of him, I tell you. But like I said, I grew up with maps because my father was a draftsman and a surveyor, and we always had maps and things around me. But the most important map that in my life, which I've kept, is this one. Now, I know that doesn't look like much to you, but that map changed my life. Not only did it change my life, but that map is the precursor of everything that I do now and I've done ever since. It's a bit of a personal story, and actually this happened 18 years ago yesterday, on the 19th of January, 2003. I'd been out walking and fell ill, and I was sent to hospital, and they thought I had rheumatic fever, but they sent me to Manchester Royal Infirmary for an angiogram just to make sure. And then I was in Manchester Royal Infirmary for about 3 or 4 days before I had the angiogram. And I remember sitting there in bed, feeling absolutely fine, feeling 100%, sitting there in bed reading. And then this surgeon came in, and he was a heart surgeon, and he'd done the angiogram on me. And a Belgian guy, a wonderful man called Dr. Grotte. They used to call him Dr. Grotti, but it was Dr. Grotte. He was a Belgian guy. His English wasn't very good. My Belgian is non-existent, and his Welsh was non-existent. So he was trying to explain to me what was going on with me. And then I said to him, look, draw it down on a pad of paper. So he did, and this is the drawing he made. And that's a map of my heart. So the triangle bit is my heart, and then the arrows go all around, are sort of like my arteries and that sort of thing. And he explained to me that what was wrong with me was that I didn't have rheumatic fever. He said because of a family illness, all 4 of those arteries were between 82% and 95% blocked. I was 40 at the time, and I remember him standing there next to my bed, looking down at me, and he said, I can only guarantee you 6 weeks, he said. And it's true what they say, you know, your life flashes before your eyes. And I remember going into shock and thinking, wow, I couldn't even open my mouth. And he turned around and he said, I'm going to go away and think about it, is what he said. And he left me at that. And I said to him, wait, I said, give me the drawing so that I can show it to my family, which is why I've still got the drawing. Give me the drawing. And I sat there in bed for about 2 hours looking at this drawing. And my mind was all over the place. I kept having flashbacks to primary school in Llanrug and all the rest of it, all this sort of thing. And I looked at this thing, and there was something about the drawing, and I couldn't quite figure it, but my mind was all over the place. So there it was. Anyway, 2 hours later, his junior doctor came in. And he was a lovely guy as well. And he said, so I assume you've seen Dr. Grotti? And I said, yes. I said, it's awful. Oh, wow, I don't know what to do. And he said, oh, we figured out what to do. And I looked at him, I thought, what do you mean? He says, oh, we've been pioneering these kind of bypasses. And we're going to give you 4 of them. We're going to give you quadruple. And there's a very good chance it'll work, he said. And if it does, not the word if, but if it does, you'll be bouncing out of here in about a week's time, feeling 10 years younger. Do you want us to do it? And I think that my reply, yes, please, was about 10 octaves higher than my usual voice. And he, okay, and he said, and he went away. I felt elated. I certainly gone from one extreme to another. I felt absolutely elated. Every worry in my life just disappeared off my shoulders. I thought it was great. And I looked, and I still had this drawing in my hand in front of me. And because I'd suddenly relaxed, I looked at this drawing, and then I suddenly realized what it was about this map that was bugging me all that time. And I looked at it and I thought, good grief, it's the road map of Llanrug, the village where I grew up in. It is identical, okay? I grew up in Longroes at the top there, and those are the roads to Crawian, Pontresthall, Caernarfon and Llanberis. And I say this to people, the appropriately named Eortafalf Avenue. There isn't one, but there should be, but there we are. So it changed my life, you see, because what they do with you these days is that they take you away from things like that. And then they put you in, I had the operation, then it took me a while to get over that. But then the first thing they did was get hold of me. I was never a slop. I always used to walk mountains and things, but they got hold of me and put me on treadmills and bikes. There's all this exercise by invitation thing, which is one of the best things ever, and got me fit. So what I'd had was a heart attack, thinking it was rheumatic fever. It was a heart attack, but I had no idea it was. I had no classic symptoms. So that was the 19th of January. By the 31st of December that same year, I'd walked and run 1,000 miles. That's how wonderful the treatment it was that I had. It was just incredible. And his words came true when he said, you'd be bouncing around feeling 10 years younger. Came true, absolutely true. And about 6 or 7 months later, when I was beginning to get I was freelancing at the time with photography and things. And I was beginning to get my life back together again, and somebody phoned me up from the Archaeological Trust here in Bangor, and he said, oh, did you know, we knew you're interested in this. He said, do you know that Gwynedd Archaeological Trust and Clwyd and Powys are doing a project to try and find the course of the lost Roman road from Caernarfon, Saguntium, to Diva, Chester. Oh, yes. I said, oh, yes. I said, you don't fancy going up in the air and taking some photographs? And I thought, oh, crikey, yeah, please, great. Because as you know, you see things when you go up in the air, and you see patches and things on the ground. I'll show you one photograph, okay? Here it is. Now then, that, as it happens, is near Pentir, just outside Bangor. And it's clear, isn't it? I mean, this was taken on a hot, that summer was really hot and dry. And you see the parch marks there in the ground, yeah? You can see that clearly. There it is, the Roman road right down there, you know, going past Pentir Power Station, which is on the top left there. Clear as daylight. And I should point out to you, actually, that the Romans weren't that clever, that they didn't leave us yellow arrows at the bottom just to say we were here and say this was the road, by the way. So that I put that in. But that's great, isn't it? You know, and people were spotting these things here and there, you know. In the fields and Gwynedd and Conwy and Flintshire and beyond, and in fact, just out of shot there's a little lane which goes across just out of shot there. And you know, when it's really, really dry, you don't have to be in the air to spot where there's a Roman road buried beneath the ground, because you can see them sometimes quite clearly. Look at that! Isn't that amazing? That is just outside Pentir. I took this during the drought. In 2019. Isn't that amazing? That's fantastic. So what happened then after so many months of doing this sort of thing? The archaeologists had enough sort of like reference points here and there where they'd seen things from the air or from the ground to join the dot, yeah, from Caernarfon to Chester. So they had a fairly good idea where this Roman road had been. You know, it probably went out of use about 1,500 years ago, but they had a fairly good idea where it was. So now then, remember, I'd gone through all this sort of an experience of thinking that I was on my deathbed, and I came out of it and I felt like 10 years younger and stuff like that. And I had so much to thank for those wonderful surgeons and what they did to me. I felt I owed something. Anyway, one night, I went to the, I know we got a whiskey drinker with us tonight, at least one whiskey drinkers. If you want a good place to go for whiskey drinks, go to the Gorsbach Inn in Llandiniolen, okay? John there has a wonderful selection, marvelous selection. I was there one night with my friend, because we like to go there. It's a lovely walk to there as well. This little pub right in the middle of nowhere on its own. And we walked there and probably had too many whiskies. And I was telling this story to him about how I'd survived this illness and stuff, and how I felt so elated and pleased, and I felt as if I owed something. And I had one of those eureka moments in my whiskey, but never mind, I had a eureka moment, and it was this. I know what I'll do, I said. I'm going to walk the Roman road from Caernarfon to Chester in the 3 days that it took the Romans to do it, and raise money for the British Heart Foundation. And then he said, my friend said, oh, you'll wake up tomorrow morning, you'll have forgotten. But I didn't. There's something sparked in me. I thought, wow, you know, what an idea. Now that we knew where this road was. I spent a year and a half, there it is. I spent a year and a half planning that walk, that sponsored walk. And in that time, the problem is, you see, so it took the Romans 3 days to walk from Caernarfon to Chester. So here, the red in that map is the first day, 25 miles. The blue is the second day, 25 miles. And the green is the third day, 25 miles. This is what the Romans did. Their military forts were 25 miles, i.e. 1 day's march apart. So that's what they did. Now, you're not slogging it either. It's a steady walk or a march for whatever they were doing. It's about 3 miles an hour, but you know, it's not much. You know, it's normal walking pace, so you're not really getting that tired. And I planned this thing out militarily, and I went to every single, wherever that road went through a farmland between Caernarfon and Chester, I went to every single landowner and asked permission to go through their land. Every single one of them thought it was a great idea, and a lot of them contributed money towards it. And they thought it was a great idea, apart from one landowner just outside St Asaph, okay, who was in a dispute with the council about something or other. So he said, no, you're not coming here. And I had to do a 3-mile detour, but it didn't matter, it didn't happen. So 3 days, and it was a great adventure. And the whole point of it was the Romans were so regimented in what they were doing. I had it arranged that we had a van follow us, would meet up with us every 2 hours along the route, so that we didn't have to carry big backpacks or food or everything. So we would have our food and things in the van. And I knew exactly where we were going to be every 2 hours. And the van was there every single time, bang on time. It worked to perfection throughout the whole 3 days. It was quite an adventure. The only problem is this. A lot of people think that Roman roads everywhere were paved. Yeah, they're wonderful, the old wonderful constructions, that they were paved everywhere. They weren't out in the countryside so much, right? They were well built, multi-layered and high above the ground with ditches either side so that the water could drain away. That's what it would have looked like in their time. But this is what we were walking in 2008 when I did it. So it was quite a slog, actually, at times, quite a slog. But what an adventure. Now, like I said, quite a few people joined in. There was something about the project. It attracted a lot of attention in the papers. And like I said, you know, raising money for the British Heart Foundation attracted lots of money in the papers. And these companies started coming, these businesses, oh, we'll give you money, we'll give you money. And the TV did something about it. And I was wondering, do you know what it was? What attracted people to it was the idea behind it, I think. And that taught me a lot. I thought there was an idea behind this, a concept, there was a really good idea behind this, and it caught people's imaginations at the time. And so on the first day, there was 4 of us that did the whole 25 miles on the first day. a lot of you will know what that is. That's the Roman milestone, the Porthinog Valley near Abergwyngregyn. And it's exactly, as it happens, halfway between Segontium Carnarvon and Canovium Caerhun, which was the 25 miles of the first day. It's more or less halfway, yeah. And so we took this photograph, and we were there exactly halfway through the day. We've been walking about 4 hours, and it's exactly halfway, and we got to that point. And we're having our photographs taken here. That's me, and then Betu, and then Yori, who was the physiotherapist who helped me out when I was ill. And the lady taking the photograph was a friend of mine from Bristol called Yvonne. Yvonne's a great friend. So she took the photograph, and then I said to Yvonne, I said, "Oh, Yvonne, would you like your photograph taken with the milestone?" And she said, "Oh, yes, please." And yes, and so she went to lean against the milestone. And Yvonne, I should point out, she likes sort of like crystals and belt and sort of lots of things that you buy in Glastonbury, sort of thing. And she leant against the milestone. And the moment she leant against the milestone, she started going, "Oh, I can hear them. I can hear them. Oh, they're chanting in Latin." And we all thought, "Oh, crikey." "Oh dear, have we bought a medicine," sort of thing, you know. "Oh, I can hear them. I can hear them." And I thought, "Oh, crap, yes, Yvonne, yes, yes." Anyway, so anyway, we eventually got her away from it, and then on we go. And every so often, Yvonne will come round, you know, she'll come visit from Bristol, and every time over the years that she's come around, she's always reminding me of that day that she leant against that milestone, and so that she could hear some Latin chanting. She always reminds me of that. I've never had the guts to tell her, ever had the guts to tell her that, in fact, that milestone is a copy from the 1950s. The original, of course, it's in the British Museum, but there we are. And I'm not going to tell her. I'm not going to tell her. I'll let that to somebody else. But this goes to show halfway between Carnarvon and Chester, right, is Betws and Ross. A lot of you will recognize that church. Betws and Ross, okay? So we should have reached Betws and Ross exactly half point through day 2, which was 12 o'clock noon exactly. And now, so we've reached 37.5 miles, and there we are. We're in Betws and Ross. You'll see by the clock, it's noon exactly. And these were the guys who were with me that day. And a lot of you will know this as well and recognize the place and know that this is the car park we're standing in of the Wheatsheaf. Was it? I think it's the Wheatsheaf pub. And the guy on the right there is the guy I had the original idea with, the one I was drinking whiskey in the Gross Park when I had the idea for this thing. And Tristan, and he turned around to me and he said, "You know, we've done really well." He said, "We walked all the way here and we're halfway," and said, "Why don't we have half a pint of Guinness each to celebrate halfway?" And I said, "Oh no, we've got a strict no alcohol policy, you know." And Tristan said, "Oh no, come on." He said, "Listen, I'll go and buy it. I'll bring out a tray of half a pint of Guinness each." So I said, "All right." And so he went in. We got everybody these Guinnesses, and we're all there drinking Guinnesses and feeling very pleased with ourselves and patting each other on the back. "Oh, well done, you know, 37.5 miles. It's brilliant. Everybody's feeling good," and we're drinking away. And Tristan looked at the church and he said, "Do you know," he said, "I think that's the only church in Wales that's got 2 spires. Do you know?" I thought, "Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that." Oh, yeah. And we were yakking away. And then this is about 1/4 of an hour later. And then I saw Tristan do a double take in the corner of my eye, looking at the church. And then he said to Gareth, "Is it what? Is it? Look at the clock." And I looked at the clock, and it still said 12 noon. And apparently the clock's been broken since about the 1960s or something. I don't know. Anyway, so I looked at my watch and I thought, "Oh, crikey, we better get going." And everybody went like that, and then off we went. Day 3, some of you will recognize that place. Day 3, we were going through Saltney. We had 1.5 miles to go. We were 73.5 miles into that walk. We had 1.5 miles to go, and there were lots of people waiting for us at the cross in Chester. There was people from the Niolen Brass Band were there, you know, so our local papers were there, my family were there, friends were there, ready and waiting for us. We were about, even though, you know, this is day 3 and 73.5 miles in, we were about 40 minutes late. And there was 3 of us left at this point. And there we are, that's Saltney Road. And we were wandering just outside shot there. There's a pub on the side of the road. That day was blisteringly hot. It was about 29 degrees in the shade. It was really hot that day. And as we were walking up towards this pub, there were 3 young lads stood outside. And we had these T-shirts with British Heart Foundation and things on, you know. And we was with our walking sticks, and we were walking along, and these 3 lads outside drinking their lagers was looking at us coming, swaying like this. And I thought, oh, they're going to say something. They're going to say something. Oh, great, here we go. And just as we walked past, this little fella, he was only about 4'8". He stood out and he said, "What are you doing?" Holding his pint like, "What are you doing?" And I explained to him very proudly. Well, he said, "We walked 73.5 miles in 3 days from Caernarfon, and we've got to go to Chester. We've got 1.5 miles from the finish point, and we're raising money for the British Heart Foundation." And he stood there and he go up to me and went, "You've walked 73.5 miles?" And I said, "Yep." "In 3 days?" I said, "Yep." "Good grief. Hang on, hold that." And he gave me this cold pint of lager, and I hate lager. And he disappeared into the pub and left us standing outside there and thinking, where's he gone? Where's he gone? I thought, anyway, and it was a hot day. And even though I hated lager, I almost took a sip of this thing, but the other stopped me doing it. And he was in there for about 5 minutes. And we thought, should we go and get him? Anyway, eventually he came out. Well, he stumbled out actually, but he came out. And he had this flat cap, you know, like Compo had in the sitcom. Yeah, and it smelled as well. This flat cap. And he came out with his flat cap in his hand, and he said, "I've been in there," he said, "and I've told everybody what you're doing, and they think it's amazing as well. And we collected this money for you." And he gave me this thing, and there's £33 in there. Isn't that lovely? The sort of, you know, the sort of things that come up. Sometimes are very unexpected things. So we've got the Llanrug Cwmaglaw map here. And this is Llanrug Church. It's a lovely little place. Some of those walls are 800 years old. Amazing, beautiful, beautiful place. It's quite a bit far out of the village. It's on its own in the middle of nowhere. And some of those walls, like I said, are 800 years old. And sadly, it was closed down 2 years ago, which is a shame. But I have the key at the moment because we're going in there and we're recording the building, and I'm going to do a virtual reality sort of tour around inside it so that there's a record of it all. But it's a fascinating. I could fill a whole hour's talk just on that place. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And it has one of the unusual features about it, as you walk in through that door, in the rafters immediately above where you walk in, is that carving. It's that beautiful, it's carving of a face, and there's no record anywhere of what its age is or what its purpose is. I'm assuming because you can see it up there as you walk in through the door, it's something to do with looking at people walking in for some reason. The only other example I've seen was in the church in England somewhere, I can't remember where. A similar thing, or a face looking down, but it had angels' wings looking down on you as well. And so it's a fascinating thing. But one of the things one of the ways I go and look up a piece of history from the walks or the map or whatever, is I'll go through that wonderful Library of Wales, you know, the old newspapers. And I'll flip through these and you get some amazingly, hilariously funny stories in there sometimes. And I was looking up Llanrug Church, and I came across this story in the 1880s of this missionary from Llanelli who came up to Llanrug Church because he was wanting to raise money to go and do missionary work over in India and around that part of the world. And so he was spending time in Llanrug, and he was spending time raising money and preaching in Beaumaris as well. So when he was there, so he's given all these sermons. He was there for a few weeks and in Beaumaris for a few weeks, and this is the sort of thing that he did. And as I was reading through the newspapers, something else was kept coming up all the time in the same newspapers. There were all these sort of like running story, these articles about somebody going around stealing women's undergarments. Yeah. And cool, this is a good one. Anyway, so I carried on the flow on this story anyway, and carried on. eventually, after weeks of this thing happening, the police certainly put 2 and 2 together. The person who was going around stealing ladies' undergarments from washing lines was this missionary, okay? And the story goes, in fact, he wasn't a missionary at all. He was a total con man. And he was just going around from one place to the next throughout Wales, preaching, pretending to raise money for this missionary work somewhere, and stealing the ladies' undergarments and selling them off. And the police caught up with him, took him to Carnarvon court, the court in Carnarvon, and he got 6 months hard labour, put him in jail. 6 months later, he's released. He's all sort of like full of himself, all cocky and full of himself. And when they let him out, they open the door creaks open, and he's thinking, right, where shall I go next to do this kind of thing, you know? But as he stepped out through the door, who was waiting outside for him? But the Anglesey Constabulary. And they said, you're coming with us, sunshine. And they grabbed him and took him immediately off to Beaumaris Court, where he was given 9 months hard labour in Beaumaris. And then he disappears off the face of the earth. I can't come up with him again. You get some strange things, but that's a really good, you know, a really good sort of like well of information in all those newspapers. I get loads and loads out of those. Now, occasionally, about once a year, we did this last year, but once a year around the summer term, I get a lot of kids, school kids asking me, oh, can I come and do work experience with you? And they say, yeah, okay, we usually get about 2 or 3. And what I try and do is I try and get them dirty, yeah? Okay, so right, you're going to get your hands dirty and all this sort of thing. We're going to go and do a dig somewhere, a little dig. I've got a neighbour of mine, some of you might know her name, Jan Hyland. A neighbour of mine, she's an archaeologist, she's a retired archaeologist and geologist. Now, there's a rare combination. And I tell you what, if there's 2 things that go together, it's archaeology and geology. And she comes and she advises us when we do this sort of thing. But we just do the simplest of digs. This is actually in Cwm Maglaw. I'm sure many of you will know what Cwm Maglaw is. It's between Carnarvon and Llanberis. And that Cwm Maglaw, if you translate it to English literally, I suppose you think Valley of Coal, because there was never any coal in Cwm Maglaw, and there's lots of debates of how the name originated. And then in this heritage centre, if you like, where we will be opening in Cwm Maglaw School, the room to my right here, I'm in Llanberis at the moment, the room to my right here is just full of hundreds and hundreds of old, rare history books around here, which we'll be putting up in the library when we open this heritage centre. And in there's an essay written in 1928 by somebody in Cwm Maglaw whose forefathers, you know, lived in Cwm Maglaw, and it states very clearly there that in fact the name comes from the 16th century Irish camp that was situated there. A load of Irishmen came over, and they constructed a charcoal burning camp. So Glaw is actually the old Welsh name for charcoal. Okay, so somewhere in Cwm Maglaw there was this charcoal burning camp. Okay. The thing with Cwm Maglaw was, so if you go to Cwm Maglaw today, it's all slopes, deep, steep slopes. The lake used to come all the way up to where the high street is in Cwm Maglaw today, in those days, and the rest of it is all steep. So you couldn't put a charcoal burning camp there, except for one place, a place called Frongader. A friend of mine lives there, which is like this shoulder on the hill, and it's about 100 yards long. And then I thought to myself, you know, if we were going to find a charcoal burning camp in Cwm Maglaw, I put money on it that it would be up on that shoulder of land. So I asked my friend Dorothy, who owns it, and I said, do you mind if we do a little dig? And she said, oh, it'd be wonderful. Yes, please. So it was on her land. And she pointed out to me the fact in the 50s and 60s, they had a little campsite there. So we marked out at random the place, to be honest, and we marked out this sort of like 2 meter by 3 meter square thing, and we started sort of to clear it out and dig it out. And sure enough, for the first 4 to 6 inches, it was full of tent pegs and sort of like beer cap bottle, beer bottle caps and that sort of thing. Also, and then when we got underneath that, then it got really interesting. Now this doesn't look like much at the moment. This is just cleaning it away. But what became, it's not obvious from this, but what became obvious was that there was lots of burning in the soil the deeper we got down. And also some curves started appearing. There's something about harder soil which was curved. And then when we cleaned this trench all out, it became apparent to us what was happening. This is a cross section of the side of this trench, and you'll see those layers of burning very, very clearly. And in one spot, there was a place where obviously there'd been some kind of funnel, right, going into something or other. And then we got Jan, the archaeologist, back and said, Jan, what do you think? And she looked at this and she thought, you've just found the charcoal burning camp. It's 16th century. You just found the charcoal burning camp. I was very pleased. What makes sense of it all, I found this drawing of a similar camp, not the one in Cwmaglaw, but you can see what I mean. See those circular sort of like, charcoal burning stacks that they're constructing over there. That's what we were excavating, those things. And they were like palimpsests, like one on top of each other. They were quite confused because they were all over the place. But there was all sorts of things. There must have been doing some metalworking there as well, because we were coming up with a lot of sort of like, residues from metalworking and that sort of thing. So there we are. So that's the origins of Cwmaglaw. It's the Valley of Charcoal Burners. So that's what it means. Now, I'm jumping through this a bit. So the other thing we do are these little exhibitions. Okay. Now, I try and do it now. Then Menter Fachwen is a social enterprise, and those of you who know about Menter Fachwen know that we do lots of work about giving people with learning difficulties opportunities, as well as young school pupils opportunities to get involved with projects and things that they wouldn't normally. And with me, there's two guys that Menter Fachwen use the service, who have both have learning difficulties, and they're both excellent photographers, and they love working on these maps and things with me. And they're great fun. And I asked one of them, I said, do you want to start doing exhibitions? Because we've got this idea in our head. Let's do exhibitions about things which are lost but are still there. And he said, what sort of things do you like? And his name's Gareth as well. And he said, well, I like football. I like going to the pub. Yes. And I like railway things. Yes, I know. Okay, then. So why don't we do exhibitions on the theme of lost things, like lost railway stations, lost pubs, lost football grounds? So the first one we did was lost football grounds, and he loved doing it. And we wandered around the county looking for these like fields and car parks and things where there used to be football grounds. Okay, and you needn't be interested in football to get off on this exhibition. But what we're picking up were these funny stories to do with these football grounds. That is Glasinfryn. Now, Glasinfryn is just off the A55, just very near Bangor. And this is where Glasinfryn Swifts used to play up until about 1920 in that field. It's a quagmire today, absolute quagmire. And amazingly, those of you who know Glasinfryn, well, there's only about 20 houses there, but that was big enough to have a football team in the old days. And they were quarrymen, weren't they? No, these guys were Penryn quarrymen, but they were quarrymen. This is what they did on a Saturday afternoon. And amazingly, as you look in the newspapers, even though Glasinfryn is such a small place, they were one of the top football teams on the North Wales coast in the 1910s. Amazing. But they had loads of crowd problems there, loads of crowd problems. Whenever they played there, 200 people came to see them. And all the wives came as well. And even if it was a nice, hot, sunny summer's day, I was reading this in the paper reports, they would bring their umbrellas with them, the wives. And the wives would stand along the line, the lines, there. And whenever one of the opposition used to run past down the run, they used to trip them up with their umbrellas or hit them over the head with their umbrellas, that sort of thing. Terrible, terrible things happened. And they were one day, Glasinfryn were playing their arch rivals, Llanllechid Celts, okay? This is the local derby. And the referee gave the Llanllechid Celts a penalty. And the crowd went wild. Remember, there's 200 of them. 200 of them used to go to that field to watch these things. 200 of them. And they started, and they ran riot. And they ran after the referee, who ran for his life out of the ground, through a gate, which is just outside the shot on the right there, jumped over through the gate, then ran across. There's a little footpath across there that goes up to the viaduct where the old Bangor to Bethesda Railway used to run. He clambered up the viaduct, right, with his crowd in pursuit. Out by pure luck, there was this slow train going by, and he jumped onto the train and got away like that. And for years afterwards, the police decreed that every time Glastonbury and Swifts played at home, there had to be 4 policemen in attendance for their home football matches. And for years afterwards, we got a photograph of one of them. They had to put up these posters. These are running after. They had to put these posters up around the village to say, "Behave yourselves now at future football matches, or we'll shut your club down." So amazing places, amazing stories. That exhibition was full of that. And this other thing about Gareth is, Gareth said, "Oh, can we do an exhibition on lost pubs?" I said, "Yeah." So we concentrated on lost pubs from like the Llanberis Valley here down towards Felinheli, Pentir, a bit over towards Bontnewydd that way. And unbelievable, we found references to 160 of them just in this tiny little place, this tiny area from the 1750s onwards. And we wondered what these places were or what was there today. So we used to go around and take photographs of these. Cwmaglaw, which I was telling you about, which is only one street, quite short street, in the 1830s had 18 pubs just on that street. That was probably a pub every 2 houses. And in the 1830s, I opened up this account of problems in Cwmaglaw. Cwmaglaw had more crime per head of population than anywhere else in Wales in the 1830s, apart from Merthyr Tydfil, believe it or not. And Gwalchmai. I don't know what was happening in Gwalchmai, but there we are. Something was happening there. And then we pick up these stories, and every single one of these lost pubs had a story behind it. And one of the things I found in the newspapers is the reason why the Britannia Inn shut. Britannia Inn is that house that's behind the stop sign. And it's an awful place, apparently. It was a hell of a place. And I opened up this newspaper and I found out why it shut down. And it shut down because on the day the owner had to go to court to renew his license. What the magistrate had written down was the license wasn't renewed due to the fact that the publican dropped dead on his way to court. And that was it, we'll shut the place down. So it's full of this sort of thing, And talking of Felinheli, now here's the thing. So we did a Felinheli map. And I'll tell you what, it was like working in Prohibition era Chicago. I'll tell you what, because here's the thing. Now then, Felinheli, the meaning of the name Felinheli, a lot of people think that it's to do with salt mill, heli as in Halland, salt mill. It's not. It means tidal mill. There is another Felinheli near Llanelli. It's only a tiny little place, but it means tidal mill. Now, the thing with working in Felinheli, I turned this more into a kind of community project. The thing with working in Felinheli is that Felinheli was split into two factions, okay? One half of Felinheli, who live that side of the river, absolutely insistent that that old mill used to be on their side of the river. And then on the other side of the river, Afon Heilyn, right, that side of Felinheli, have always insisted that the mill was on their side, you see. And you go to a pub in Felinheli these days, and they will argue about it. Honestly, the arguments will get heated. So I thought, I'm going to prove one way or the other where that mill used to be. The only thing initially we had to go on was this plan. This is a map of Felinheli and the other side, Moel y Don, on Anglesey. And this is about 1790. So this is before there was barely a building where Felinheli is today. But if you look to the left there, there's a little inlet and there's the word mill, you see it? And then in the middle of the inlet, there's this building. That's the only clue we have of what the building looked like, by the way. But it doesn't tell you much about its location because this isn't a, this isn't a map that's measured properly, that sort of thing. But at least we know it's somewhere there. It was somewhere at that spot there. And I thought, well, how are we going to find this out then? But then, of course, the answer came with this dock itself. This is the old slate dock. This is where the ships and the boats used to come in. And then the slate used to come down from Dinorwig Quarry. They used to come here, and then the boats would take them away to wherever they went, Ireland, Scotland, or that sort of thing. Now, this dock was expanded about 1903, something like that, 1900, 1903, and it was owned by the Faenol Estate. And the historian in the Faenol Estate had a copy of the architect's drawings for building the dock. And here it is. And if you look at that carefully, there it says Felinheli Mill, and there's an arrow pointing down to it. And the wonderful thing about this plan is that it's properly measured. It's not a sketch or anything. It's properly measured, I do a lot of this sort of thing. I've been doing lots of this in the Dinorwich Quarry recently. Take that kind of map, okay, and you superimpose it on top of a proper Ordnance Survey 25 inch to a mile or whatever it is there, and then you can locate exactly where that building was. So that's the dock today, and the mill would have been there. There you go. Now, the wonderful thing about technology is to make it disappear again. Isn't it? Hey, look at that. It was there. And if you stand at that exact spot, and we did a big exhibition when we launched this map, and I showed them this story. And the wonderful thing about that spot is that in fact, the mill as it is today is neither on that side of the river nor that side of the river. It's actually in the middle of the river. And the groans that went round the crowd that evening was just like, you could hear it sort of miles away. So there we are. So the old argument about where Felinheli stood, it has been solved. Now I'm nearly finished. You'll be glad to hear. Most of the work at the moment, like I said, all this is commission stuff. Most of the work at the moment has been since lockdown, since March, is to do with the Llechi project. Okay. Now, this is the project that goes with every single Slate Valley, Llanberis, Diniolen, Nantlla, Benafestiniog, etc., have been allocated lottery money to have exhibitions and things and events and things happening in preparation for the World Heritage Status bid, the UNESCO World Heritage Status bid for the Slate Valleys. And so we've been given 3 big projects to do. The one in Llanberis is the Isaac Hughes project, and this is unique. This is one of the most amazing things I think I've ever worked on. It's been an absolute pleasure from the beginning. In the mid-1980s, a family from Leicester moved into a house in Thomas Street, Llanberis. And when they went in there, they went up into the attic after they moved in to put some boxes up and realized that nobody had been up in that attic for 100 years. And they had problems getting in. And when they went in there, they were greeted by this view of sort of like dust. There's 2 to 4 inches of dust in front of them, but like in shapes of in sort of square shapes, one on top of the other. And then they put this dust away, and they realized that there were these old boxes and old wooden boxes, and inside were all these photographic glass plates and prints and paperwork and letters and things in there. And there was the collection of an old Victorian photographer called Isaac Hughes. And the lady that found it has been sitting on this for many years, wondering what to do with it, wanting to do something with it. And she came to me and she said, Gareth, she said, can you make something of this? It'd be wonderful to have an exhibition. So I put into this Llechi Cymru project that this should be the Llanberis one exhibition, and they agreed. And so we've been commissioned to do this. I'll tell you what, it's an amazing project. Like I said, there's over about 120 images that he left and all these letters and everything. And then as we were working on it throughout last year, another collection was found in another attic, in fact, in the building directly opposite to me here. And it's a treasure. It's an absolute treasure. And what you have to remember, that Isaac Hughes he came from Denbighshire, by the way, and he moved to Llanberis in the early 1870s. He was the first photographer to spend any time with the quarrymen in the Dinorwich Quarry. And also, Llanberis was a young village in those days. There was nothing here, until his period. So these villagers that he's taking portraits of, these are the pioneers. These are the very first people to live here. But the thing is great is that even though he didn't leave us much sort of information about who these people were, through pure detective work and a good bunch of sort of like historians doing this with me, is that we've been able to figure out who a lot of these people were. And then we've been able to take advantage of lockdown, if you like, and spend a lot of time on it, and then find out their stories and their histories and all that sort of thing. And it's been the most amazing thing. I'll show you this photograph. Now, this is the kind of condition that the glass plates were in when they were when they were discovered in the 1980s. So they've been in the attic for over 100 years, getting damaged and all the rest of it. And I scanned this as it is. This is what this glass plate was like. So here we are. We've got two quarrymen shaking on a deal, a bargain, in Dinorwig Quarry. Okay. As first I thought I'd scanned the plate the wrong way around because they're shaking with their left hands. But then again, the guy on the left, he's got his right hand on his walking stick. And then when I started to clean this plate up and started looking at it more deeply, I suddenly realized that in that piece of slate that's behind the guy on the right, his leg, I thought to myself, there's something written on that. So I blew it up in the computer on photo and then cleaned it up on Photoshop. And lo and behold, what I discovered was that the name Abyssinia was written on it. Now, Abyssinia is one of the galleries in Dinorwig, the name of one of the galleries in Dinorwig Quarry. And I knew this because like just prior to doing this project, we've been working on the Welsh Place Names project. And I had the task of finding out the names of all the places in Dinorwig Quarry and mapping them. And there's 140 names to all the galleries and the you know, the inclines and everything. And Abyssinia was one of them. So I knew where Abyssinia was. Now, if I go back briefly, there it is. Look where they're. So they're outside this a splitting shed, shaking on a deal. And then in the background, there's this sort of like hint of an alcove, okay? Just in the background. And then because I knew then, because this is Abyssinia, that gallery, and that is probably the splitting shed on Abyssinia Gallery, I went and looked for it. And lo and behold, this is the exact same spot today. There it is. You know, the juxtaposition between what it was like and that is like, whoa, you know, and this is what we've been doing with a lot of these photographs from Isaac Hughes, is doing this sort of thing, finding out where they were taken, not just who the people were, but where they were taken, you know, and then the exhibition is going to be, look at these places now. It's been an incredible project, and hopefully we'll have it up by the summer here in Llanberis, and you'll have plenty of time to go and see it because it has to be, I'm contractually obliged to exhibit it for 5 years, so you've got plenty of time. But it's been a fascinating project, and these stories are just absolutely amazing. We really are. We're doing one in Diniolen as well. I'm nearly there. We're doing one in Diniolen as well. Similar sort of thing, but this story in Diniolen epitomizes what Mensav Achwen Walk and Discover project is about. I have a copy of a book here, right? Like I said, we got our library. And there's a book written on Diniolen in 1869. And when you read the very first chapter, you realize that before the quarry in the Dinorwig Quarry got going in the 1780s, but until about mid 1805 to 1810, there was nothing in Diniolen, the Clutterbot. There wasn't a building. There was an old track, which this book talks about. And this ancient track is what the old quarrymen from the villages far away used to walk up to go to the quarry in Dinorwig every single day. And this track went out of use in 1811, then because he couldn't carry slate or wagons along this track, but I had a kind of an idea where it was. And I went to see the landowner. I knew the guy anyway, and I said to him, "What do you think? Do you have any idea exactly where this thing is?" And he said to me, he said, I've been wanting to tell this story for years. Come with me. And we went down through his fields, and you can still see from that photograph, even though that track hasn't been used for, well, 210 years, you can still see in places where that track used to be. And you can imagine these people walking miles and miles and miles every day from their villages far away to get up to Dinorwig to it. But this book mentions something. On a rock in a place called Lletyr Llwyd, near there, yeah, they carved their initials. And the reason why they carved their initial is that when they used to walk to the quarry in the mornings, perhaps there was other groups walking up behind them, maybe half a mile away, and they wanted to know whether these people had gone before them. So they would carve their initials on a rock. This is what the book says, and then put little stones on their initials just to let the people behind know that they've gone ahead. You know, fantastic. I wondered, wouldn't it be great to find that rock? And we wandered around this track for ages, and lo and behold, there they were. And nobody's seen this since this book was written in the 1860s, and nobody's come. We had to clean away the moss and all the rest of it. But there's this RI and EI Avion Evans was EI. We even know these guys' names, you know. But that epitomizes what the Walking Together project and the kind of things that we do does really. Finally, like I said, we've got this library. That'll be going up to the Heritage Centre in Cwmaglaw when it happens. That's with all displays, and that'll be HQ for me. And there'll be a little cafe there as well. You know, Menter Fachwen will have other projects going on there, so it's going to be really nice. The other thing we've been doing over the years, because people know what we do, is that people give us these books. And then also the other things that people do is knowing that we are also collecting, we've been doing it for years, collecting archives of old photographs. And boy, you know, I've been finding old photographs in skips and rescuing them over the years and all this sort of thing. Rare things. And people keep sending me things. Now, we do history, I suppose, because, you know, things change all the time, don't they? Things never stay the same, I guess. And our lives today will be alien to people in 20, 30, 40 years time. And things never stay the same. But you know, sometimes you see a photograph and sometimes you're reminded, well, actually, no, things might, you know, the things we touch might change. But essentially, things just stay the same. I was sent this photograph, which I thought was a lovely photograph. It actually came from the North Wales Police Archive. And I have no idea where it is. Somebody told me where it was. I have no idea where it is, somewhere along the coast somewhere. And they gave it to me specifically because they really liked what was written on the back of the photograph. And on the back of the photograph were the words, "This man was charged with careless driving." And I thought, then if you go down the description, it says, he was typewriting whilst driving. Can you imagine that? Typewriting whilst driving. But there we are. Everything changes, but some things stay the same.